Hey y'all, hey, welcome back to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory with your girl Shakim B. Today I have Dara on with me. I'm very excited to bring her on and introduce herself. I feel like a lot of what we're going to be talking about is going to add so much value to the audience, and I hope that you guys really take some value from this. So, without further ado, come on up.
Hi.
Hey,
First of all, as you said that, I hit my microphone and it came unplugged. Can you hear me through the mic okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Wait, hold on, because it's not coming through the mic. 1 second.
Oh no.
Okay. Okay, now we're back on. I couldn't hear you in the headphones. So
Okay.
hi, everyone. My name is Dara. I am a physical therapist. I live in Israel. Clearly, I'm an American. You can tell by my accent, but I'm one of many, many Americans who are living over here. And I am a physical therapist. I'm a mother of four pretty much grown up children. And on the side, I host a podcast myself called Holy Health, where I interview a variety of health experts on a bunch of different topics relating to health. And then following that, I bring on a biblical expert who kind of puts what the main health expert spoke about into the context of where we can see this biblically. And it's a lot of
Awesome.
fun.
That is awesome. So, what inspired you to become a physical health therapist and physical therapist, and how did your journey lead you to start your own practice in Jerusalem?
Okay, so first of all, I it was something I wanted to do for a really long time. So I came here to Israel. I was sort of dragged here when I was 15 years old with my family. And I thought, I didn't want to be here. And when I was 18, I left. I went to New York and I started college there. And my mom kept telling me to be a physical therapist. And as what 18-year-old listens to their mother? I mean, that would be ridiculous, right?
No.
So I resisted the idea and I kind of started studying physical education and some other things, but a few years in realized that physical therapy sounded very appealing. But the journey to get there didn't seem so appealing to me because by that point I had almost graduated college and I needed to go back and retake physics and statistics and a whole bunch of other courses that did not sound very fun. So I kind of sat with that idea until I was about 25 when I decided that I was moving back to Israel. And I told everybody I'm moving back to Israel and I'm going to Tel Aviv University and I'm going to study physical therapy and that's what I'm going to do. Without looking into how hard is it to get in, can you get in? Getting into physical therapy in Israel is like getting in probably to like, I don't know, Harvard law school or something like that. It's really, really, really difficult. And so I kind of got back here. I started teaching aerobics and other fitness classes. And people would come up to me and, my knee hurts, my shoulder hurts. And I always wanted to help them. And I didn't know what to say. So it was still sitting with me. And the opportunity sort of came up when I was 33. When I was about 32, right after I had my second child, we decided that we were going to go to the United States for at least a few years. And I agreed to go because I wanted to study physical therapy and I felt like I could probably get in there. So that's what I did. When I was 33, I began that journey of physical therapy school, pregnant with my third child, and I graduated pregnant with my fourth.
Wow.
And I just haven't looked back. Like, I love it. I mean, this was what I wanted, this ability just to, I feel like a detective sometimes trying to figure out what caused somebody's problem. Why do they have pain? Because, you could get three people with knee pain and everybody's knee pain could kind of be coming from something different. So
Exactly.
I love it. And working for myself, we have socialized medicine over here. So it's kind of, listen, I did work in the insurance, system within the United States. And it was not easy there either because, many places did want you to see, 3 to 4 patients an hour, which is
Mhm.
kind of what they would want you to see through the health funds here too. But by the time I got here, I'd been practicing for 5 years already. And I was just kind of ready to go out on my own. I had 4 young kids and I was able on my own, just to see a couple of people a day versus having to work an 8 or a 10-hour day making probably less money. So that
Yeah.
was my journey there.
Awesome. So it sounds like you people are already like coming to you to look for what you didn't even know that you were called to do initially. That's awesome. Like what how did like what was your initial take on that? Were you like intrigued by people or were you like did it give off red like bells like maybe I'm supposed to be doing this?
So I think so because I think what's that expression they tell you about I don't know, something about having a job, but like if you love your job, it's like you've never worked a day. And I
Yes.
love my job. I love working with people. I love what I do. And I think some of it, and maybe why, I think that sometimes it's that ability of speaking very confidently about something, even when you feel like maybe you don't know so much.
Yeah.
Because when I look back on how little I knew then versus what I know now, there's
Mhm.
just such a world of difference. And
Yeah.
also, I think a little bit being humble and understanding that as much as you know, or as much as you think you know, there's always something else to learn. So I continue to go to continuing education courses. I was in the United States a year ago and the year before that for courses. And I continue to learn things on the internet and take courses over here. And I think it's we're never done learning. There's
Mhm.
always someone who's got something that can help someone.
Oh
And
yeah,
so questing for that, I think.
for sure. Can you share the story behind Holy Health? What sparked the idea to blend modern health topics with biblical wisdom?
I would love to do that, sure. So I'll tell you, when I opened my practice, I'm one of these people that I always call myself like an idea person because I'm good at coming up with the ideas, but the actual follow through of actually going and doing it could take a lot longer. So the fact that I got the doors open to this clinic was great. So I had this idea. I don't know why. I guess podcasts. I'm in my practice about 9 years, so probably about 8 years ago. Podcasts were pretty new. I wasn't even really listening to them. I don't even know if Spotify was around 8 years ago, but I guess I had heard, or maybe I heard one or two people doing podcasts. And I decided that I wanted to start a podcast. I didn't know what it was, but I thought Holy Health would be such a great name because I knew I wanted it to have something to do with health. I knew I wanted it to have something to do, I'm an Orthodox Jew, so we follow the Torah. So I wanted to somehow blend it with Torah. And I felt like, wow, Holy Health. I live in the Holy City. I live in the Holy Land. Holy Health could be kind of a cool name. And I just wasn't really sure what I wanted or how I was going to do it
Mhm.
until COVID hit. And during COVID, I watched the world around me freak out. I watched people who I know to be very healthy, people who look after their health, just sort of freak out. And again, I hope this doesn't get too political for your audience but I have no issue. If somebody wanted to get vaccinated for COVID, it's a free world, go ahead and do it. But what bothered me was that everybody thought getting vaccinated was the only thing that they could do. And
Mhm.
when I tried to tell them, there's all this great information and there's Dr. Zelenko and all of these other people, and listen to what some of these people just listen. I'm not telling you have to buy it, but people didn't even want to listen. People were so scared. And that was when it hit me. I wanted to teach people, not from myself, because I'm certainly not the expert in everything, but I wanted to give people knowledge. To me, knowledge is power.
Oh
And I
yes.
wanted to start interviewing people who talked about different types of health topics just to get people to open their minds because listen to everything and then make your decision from a place of knowledge and power versus, making your decision from a place of fear.
Yeah.
And that was when I kind of morphed it into, well, I thought it would be such a great idea. If I'm having these guests come on, what if I could find somebody to somehow tie this into Torah? And it's really fun because, I assume even with the New Testament, but you can always find proofs of things within the Bible.
Mhm.
And so everyone who comes on and does that Torah piece or that Bible piece finds their own connections and their ways to make these things connect. And it's just really, really fun way of doing it. So it gives people something a little different because a lot of the people I interview can be found on many, many other podcasts.
Mhm.
But I guess it's just a different flavor, a different spin on it. And I love doing it. It's so much fun.
I think that's so awesome that you were able to merge the two together, and using your health and medical background, and then obviously your religion, and just put it together. And I think recently I just saw something where someone was talking about how people should be going back to their roots, right? Because the further we go along, and the more we find out, especially in this age of Aquarius, the age of truth, the more we're finding out that maybe the things that we were conditioned to believe at one point, um, aren't altogether true, you know. And so it's causing people to have to go, to the way back and start doing some, due diligence and be obedient for once, So I
That's
absolutely love
true.
that. Mm,
And some of the things that some of our greatest rabbis and sages said, we have a sage called the Rambam, who was also a medical doctor. And he has all of these, he's written a whole book on medicine and on health. He wrote this thousands of years ago. And everything he said, it's sort of like, this is what people call biohacking today, right? Get out in the sunlight, walk barefoot on the ground, drink enough water, eat fish a couple times a week. Like all of these different things that he said are things that we're kind of coming back to today and finding to be very healthy.
mm,
So again, it's sort of, we have to figure out how to, I think, extract the really good things that we have in this modern world from things that are maybe too excessive that we don't need, and
oh yeah,
that type of thing.
for sure. Um, since we're on the topic, before I ask the next scheduled question,
Sure.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this. If I can't, it's fine. But I just figured I would because with the Torah, and I know
Mhm.
I've heard, I've not read the whole thing, but they talk about parasites and the connection between like illness. Like, do you
So
also? Mm,
So I have to tell you, one of the episodes I have never done yet, but I would like to get someone on, is about parasites because it is such a big topic today.
yeah.
And I fully believe you. And I think the Rambam spoke about that as well. So what it is I'm the facilitator. So I'm never the Torah expert. I always bring on someone else. So there would definitely be somebody better than me to answer that question. But I intend, like that is, I made a whole list for 2025 of some of the topics that I wanted to have on and bringing on someone. So if you know someone you can suggest to me, that would be great. But absolutely, I intend to interview someone, and we will find a connection.
Yeah, that I definitely be really interested in and I'll find someone for you actually if you're dead serious. Because I went through like probably a period where I was researching for parasites for about a month. I put myself on a protocol. It's the
Mhm.
I word that's not to be said. If you know, you know.
Okay,
um,
fine.
yeah, but it's given to horses and sometimes
Uh,
dogs. Yep. And so
I've
I did.
taken it.
Okay. Can I tell you, literally, like, I told my mom, I was like, "Ma, like, I think I'm aging backwards." She's like, you're young. Like, what are you talking about?" I was like, "No, like, seriously." After the first round, my finger was cut. Like, usually if I get like a cut or something, it's there for like days. Like, when I say days, days. This junk healed in 2 days. It's
Wow.
closed. I'm
Wow.
like, no freaking way, but shh.
Right. So I want to just tell you though, just so you know, this is being used to treat cancer now as well.
Oh, I know. Amongst other, there are so
Hmm.
many different things. And as I'm doing research, I was like, oh my God. And for me personally, I think I told you I'm like separated and I'm not like dating anymore.
Hmm.
You know the spiritual connection between that too and like the American culture.
No, I
After
would love
doing
to hear
this,
from you.
oh,
Tell
okay.
me.
So the dating culture is more like a hookup culture
Right.
here. You know what I mean? If you know, you know. But
Right.
from all of the things that I've been learning and then putting myself on the protocol and seeing like what's happening to my body and feeling it, nobody's touching me again. I'm like,
Until
no,
you meet the right person. When you meet the
before I
right
meet the right
one
person.
person.
Yeah, the
When you
one
meet
person.
the right
But
one
they're gonna have
person.
to go through a whole cleanse and a protocol because like spiritually and religiously speaking, parasites, it's not just what people think. I feel like it's way deeper. And knowing this and having this information and then also having experienced it for myself, um, it's crazy. That's a conversation not for YouTube. This is for entertainment purposes though.
Exactly. But I jive with every single thing you're saying. I agree with. Like I really truly do. I
Yeah.
really truly do.
How has living in Israel influenced your approach to health, wellness, and spirituality?
Okay, so first of all, it's a very interesting place because people will say to me sometimes, well, why do you want to live in Israel? And that includes even people that are Jewish. There are many Jewish people living all over the world who have zero desire to live in Israel. But those of us that want to live here, it's something that you feel in here. And it's a very hard feeling to describe. Like, why do I feel I should be here? Yes, we believe in the Bible, so we believe that God, gave us this land. This is where we're supposed to be. But for me, it's deeper than that because that's just a book, that's just a story. And it's almost a feeling that I can't explain, right? And there's something about being here and walking through these lands. I can see it's nighttime, so I can't show you now. And it's not as good as where I used to live. But every Christmas, I post a picture of Bethlehem because I can see Bethlehem. I live in a city that is right south of Bethlehem. So every Christmas day, I always post a picture of Bethlehem with the view, and I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And it's just walking the land, being able to walk in the footsteps of the Bible. It's history. It's just the spirituality that you feel here. It's just, to me, it's unparalleled to anywhere else. So that's in terms more of the spirituality that you feel. There's just something about being here and being in this place. And it's just such a special place. And that's not just for Jews. Like, this is a special place for every religion. And we have, despite what many people may see on Instagram and TikTok, there is freedom of religion here. I can tell you that the bulk of the people sitting outside of my office every day, not necessarily coming to me, but sitting outside of my office, are Muslim, with hijabs. We do have freedom of religion here. And that's something that many other cultures don't experience, right? There is freedom of religion in the United States, absolutely. But it's something that many, many other Middle Eastern cultures do not experience.
Right.
And so for me, this is a spiritual place for everyone. No matter what your religion is, there is something to be found here. There are things for you to see. And in terms of health, I don't think, it's interesting because, first of all, my parents are my role models. So my very first episode of my show, I actually interviewed my parents sort of to get an idea of where my interest in health came from. Right. And I kind of always make these jokes, like, oh, back in the 70s, like, we were so healthy, my parents would make their own peanut butter, We had almost no processed food in the house. We rarely had sugar in the house. And this was like the 70s, like who knew then, right? Mm-hmm. And ironically, we all love sugar, but we just try to stay away from it, as much as we can because it's not healthy. But I think that's what started my interest in health. But then I think back on certain things, like my oldest son is 24. And when he was a baby, he must have been about a year. And I was living in Israel then. And I took him to the doctor for a well visit. And he said, okay, next time you come, we're going to give him a vaccination for the chickenpox. And I looked at him and I was like, why would you vaccinate against a normal childhood vaccine? Like, every kid gets chickenpox. Why would you vaccinate that? Like, I think, I got it. I'm immune to it. Like, why wouldn't you just let kids develop immunity that way? And I really started to question even then. Now, ultimately, I gave all my kids the chickenpox vaccine because I was like, well, I don't want to stay home with them for 2 weeks if they're sick. I ended up giving it to them. But 2 of my kids got chickenpox the first year we moved back to Israel. So I just started to question things, and that's sort of who I am. And even as a physical therapist, when a patient comes to me, my first visit is always an hour and a half because I'm actually explaining things to them. I know with myself that if you don't tell me why I'm doing something, I am not going to do it. So I feel like for most people, if you understand why you have to do something or not do something, and that kind of goes along with what you feel, that jives with who you are and what you feel, then you're going to feel very differently about that thing. And so I think that that's one of the reasons for the podcast is I wanted to get people to think and just to hear and to listen. And I think I went off on a tangent, and now I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you answered it beautifully. And you said some extra stuff too that, definitely aligns with me because I'm the same exact way. I don't know if I told you I have seven children.
Oh my God, what? Now I need to know how old you are. I don't know if you say on camera. You have 7 children?
Yeah, I have 7.
Wait, can I ask how old you are? We don't say this is your podcast, so I shouldn't be asking you. So
no, it's fine.
you look fantastic.
I'll be 37. I'll be 37 next month. Yeah, no,
Okay,
I
you look fantastic. Wow, good for you. Oh my gosh. I thought my 4 was a lot. Wow,
know.
good for you.
Yeah, well, one thing that everyone told me and my ex-husband, after we got to number 4, they said, you made your first mistake. You're not supposed to let the children outnumber you, you know. And you know, so he was always at work and I was always home with them. So I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't because but I was never alone. I always had company. So
That's there's that, that's true.
yeah,
Wow, that's amazing. Okay,
yeah.
wow, good for you. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, but with my baby, my daughter, I did everything completely different with her. Because I think like the culture here, like when you have children, it's a very scary thing. Like for one, if you don't have like the finances to do things the way that you want them to happen, you're stuck at the mercy of like the hospital and their all of their things, and then a lot of people are not educated, so they don't understand, the importance of making sure that the baby stays attached to the placenta, until it stops pulsating. They don't understand the importance of, saying no to like the eye drops and like certain vaccines that, what is it? I think it's like one of the hepatitis. Like, why are we vaccinating our babies against an HIV or a virus that was in Asia somewhere like back in the 60s? Why are we
And it's
doing that?
right, and some of them are, like, sexually transmitted only, and you're
That one.
vaccinating a tiny, tiny little baby,
Human
you
being,
know?
and with my daughter, like I had a midwife, so I still delivered in the hospital,
Me
but I
too.
had a midwife, so I did everything completely different. I did not allow them to, do anything to her, and they, even threatened me with calling CPS. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna call CPS." I said, according to law, back then, this was like almost 9 years ago. I said, according to law, it's not lawful, so you can go ahead and try. But I speak legalese very well.
Good for you. I'm, like, so impressed with you, really, like, it is not easy to stand up to a system, it really is not,
No, it's
and
not
I'm
because she's
really
frightened.
impressed.
Mhm. Yep. And they, I feel like, they definitely do bank on the ignorance of the people that are here. So if you don't know any better, you can't do any better. And everybody called me crazy. They're like, "Oh, you need to take her to her well baby." I said, "I'll take her, but there will be no vaccines to be had." And then, they're like, "Oh, the schedule, the schedule, the schedule." I said, "How about, I'll wait. I'll bring her when she's 2." So when she was 2 years old, that's the first time she actually went to get any sort of anything. And I only allowed them to give her what was state mandated, nothing else.
Good for you, because unfortunately, even though I thought I didn't think enough to say no, but certain things, like, when they told me my youngest,
Mhm,
she was tiny, even though funnily enough, all 3 of my girls, I have 1 boy and 3 girls,
mhm.
and my 3 girls are the younger ones, my son is the oldest. They all weighed 8 pounds, 10 ounces at birth. They were all big babies, but, like, my little one turned into, like, this skinny thing, and even today, she is, like, tall, skinny, skinny, skinny. She doesn't look like me. She looks like her father's side of the family.
Mhm.
And my other 2 are more normal, but one is taller and one is shorter, and but they all started out the same weight. But when I would take them also sometimes, like, let's say they had a little cold, so thankfully, our pediatrician did not vaccinate if the baby was sick at all, but then you would bring them the next time, and they would say things like, "Okay, so we're just gonna give them 2 now, like, 1 in each leg," and I was like, "No." It's like, "If you
Yeah.
give them 1,
Yeah.
and I'll come back in a month or 2 months or 3 or whenever it is, and you can give them the other one then."
Yeah.
But I wasn't as good as you were when they were younger. I only
Yeah.
woke up later, and the one that I did not in Israel, they actually give HPV to the girls and the boys now. They give it to them, I think, in 8th grade. And I wrote no all over that paper. This was before COVID. This was before anything. I wrote upside down no. I was like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I'll teach them about safe sex. Like, I will not. You're not giving them that. So my kids
Yeah.
did not get that. And I
It's
think,
definitely a violation.
I'm sorry.
I said it's definitely a violation. Like they shouldn't,
Yeah. Well, so there you probably have to take your kids to get it versus here they give it in the schools, but you have to sign a permission slip. So I wrote
oh,
no all over that permission slip.
wow,
I said
that
absolutely not.
that's the one thing, especially now, like with things that are the way things are like going, it scares the heck out of me. Are you you're familiar with the Raggedy Ann doll, the
Sure.
story? You know what I mean, right?
Oh no, the store. No, I don't. I'm not familiar.
Was it the Raggedy Ann doll? I think it was. Anyways, where they were vaccinating children in the schools. It is the Raggedy Ann doll
Okay.
because I learned about that when I was pregnant with my first daughter,
Right.
and it scared me so bad because I'm like, they can actually go into the schools and vaccinate these children, and they don't even have to ask. They don't ask. And
Wow.
they even like now, like up here where I live, they started putting little small clinics in the schools. So your kid is going to
Oh,
school, and the nurse's office has a clinic where they're vaccinating our children.
that's terrible.
I'm like
That's
that
really
should be
terrible.
at the discretion of the parents.
100%. That's really, really terrible.
Yeah.
It's like I can't think of the movie I'm thinking of where it's like they're thinking that, certain parents don't know, so we have to like we have to do it for them because they're not smart enough to understand that,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mhm.
that's really crazy. Yeah, so we literally there are people here that have really taught their kids to say like if you come at me with a needle, like absolutely no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Because there are all these stories of them trying to we don't know what's in them. We don't know what's in them. And again, I think you or I, we're not telling everyone out there, don't vaccinate your children. We're telling you to look into it,
Hmm.
to really make a decision, to understand. There's a great book called Turtles All the Way Down that people can read. And, RFK Jr. is coming in now. Look at the Children's Defense League. There are a lot of different things that people can look at. And I'm certainly, if somebody wants to vaccinate, that's fine. But we're just saying maybe learn, well, you're much younger than me. I'm 55. So I don't know how many vaccines you had growing up, but I think I only had probably 10 or 11 of them. And they say now that a kid who has like, where they give the flu shot every year and all these other things, it's something like 50 vaccines by the time they're 18. And
Hmm.
what people don't realize is it's not always that you're going to have an immediate result from that vaccine. It's that the culmination of all of these things with lifestyle, with stress, with the whole, toxic environment that we live in over the years can turn into autoimmune disease, can turn into cancer, can turn into other things. And it's not always that like someone's going to get a vaccine and drop dead. And there are people who did, but that's rare. We know that
Yeah.
that's rare. It's
Yeah.
just more what these things could also cause long term. Sometimes I think these things can harm more than they can help.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
And I don't think that, that shouldn't be the first for me personally. I feel like how about we take the poison out of the food? How about we stop dumping fluoride in the water?
Mhm.
How about we stop pumping gas into the freaking air and spraying over the skies and dumping heavy metal upon people? How about we stop poisoning the clothing?
You are
And start there and let's see, how things progress because something tells me 9 times out of 10 people's health will improve significantly just from changing those things. But that's just
I
me.
agree. I love every single thing you're saying. This was not the way I was expecting this to go. I love every single thing you're saying. You're wide awake, you know what you're talking about, and it's just getting people to open their minds and listen, You don't have to agree with everything either one of us is saying, but
Yeah,
look into it. I
absolutely.
had a patient also who told me I was crazy when he was telling me how he'd been getting into expensive cologne and he's wasting all this money. And I'm like, well, cut that now. You already told me you have anxiety and you take medication. Like, the cologne is a toxic endocrine disruptor, and he's like, no, I think you're being paranoid. I'm like, no, look into it. Things with fragrance are not good for you unless it's a natural, oil. It's not,
Mm,
anything that's like lavender scented is not what you want to be smelling.
wow. And you just taught me something because I'm like a huge fan of the Arabian perfumes.
Oh,
And
really? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can send you stuff on that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, we want
definitely.
everything to be as clean as possible. I don't think that every single person, in other words, I've interviewed people on, I don't know if you know what oxalates are, but
Mm,
it's something that's found in certain foods. There's an interesting woman, Sally K. Norton, that's found in certain foods that people think are healthy, things like spinach, almonds, are full of oxalates. And it's basically like almost like a little spiky thing. You can't see it, but it's kind of on some of these foods to sort of help protect the food. But it can build up in people's bodies and it can create a huge problem. No, I personally, I don't think every person has a problem with oxalates, but I think people who already have compromised health may very well have a problem with oxalates.
Mhm.
But if you're still eating, I don't know, Twinkies and Honey Nut Cheerios, then probably taking out oxalates isn't the first thing you need to do. I'd get rid of the Twinkies and the Honey Nut Cheerios, right?
Exactly.
Exactly what you're saying. Like there's so many things that aren't that hard that people can get rid of that will make such a huge impact on their health.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And sidebar, is there a way to like clean the body of oxalates?
So I think, okay, I have to go back and remember now because I interviewed her. It was probably a year and a half ago. It was a really good podcast episode. I think it's just stopping to eat them to get it to clean out of your body.
Okay. So
Right.
you have to like go like fast, properly
Well, not
fast.
necessarily fasting. Fasting can be a great tool, but fasting also for women and women of certain ages fasting doesn't always agree with them. For some people, intermittent fasting is great. I can
Yeah.
tell you, I intermittent fasted before I even knew it was a thing. And I thought it was great because I could go all day without eating. But guess what? Like I held on to weight. I didn't lose weight. Like it's not so great for women's hormones because
Mhm.
it can be a stressor to the body. So if somebody's body's already under stress, it can work really well for some people and it can work really well for a period of time. But no, I think it's just stopping to eat the oxalates so your body can start to clear its system of the oxalates. And
Okay.
I could be wrong on that. I need to go back and listen to this episode myself. But it's in many things. It's in spinach, it's in kale, it's in almonds, like things that we think are really, really healthy. And
Yeah.
I believe that people can tell if you have a problem with it. If you're someone who eats healthy and you can eat almonds or you eat spinach and a little while later, like you're not feeling good, it's
Mhm.
probably not good for you. I think that when people start to really listen to their bodies, we can see, I don't think every person is allergic to dairy. I don't even think every person is allergic to gluten. And I think that people can tell by either cutting it out and then putting it in, or just really paying attention to how they feel and sort of separating their foods.
Oh, for sure. For
You know,
sure.
uh,
Um, that just freaked me out a bit because I literally I've been eating I stopped eating eggs actually because I saw something really scary the other day and I was like, yeah, I'm all set. Um, but I've
oh,
been eating like spinach and plantain and
right.
it leaves like a weird film on your teeth. Like I'm like, oh, it's gross. Like
Wait, are you talking about plantains?
no, not the plantains, the spinach because I cook it a little bit. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
If you don't feel badly afterwards, I mean, again, maybe don't eat it every day,
Mhm.
but if you're overall eating an unprocessed diet, I think when somebody would go or think to take it out is when is if they've taken everything else out and they're still not feeling good,
Mhm.
then it's something to look at. But also, anybody who's ever had kidney stones, I believe that what Sally Norton was saying was that the kidney stones are a buildup of oxalate. And so, anybody who's had things like kidney stones, you're probably a lot more sensitive to
Got it.
oxalates as well.
Wow. Well, that's definitely good to know.
Yeah.
So, running a private practice, hosting a podcast, and raising a family is a lot. How do you balance it all?
So, okay. So first of all, full disclosure, my children are now 18 to 24 years old. My 24-year-old son is married, so he lives out of the house. And my oldest daughter is working. She's like a counselor in a very interesting school where the high school kids get up in the morning and they spend half the day doing agriculture from 5 a.m. to noon.
Mm.
And then they learn in school in the afternoon. And then my 20-year-old is in the army and my 18-year-old is in like a pre-army program herself. So often during the week, it's myself and the dog home.
Nice.
But over the yeah, yeah. So I always tell people, I'm sort of lucky in that when my kids were really young, I was still married then. So I too, I'm also divorced. When my kids were really young, I was married then. And so I probably only worked maybe for 3 to 4 hours a day. And by the time I built up enough where I was ready to really make the move and open a clinic within a facility or open my own facility, my kids were already older. I guess it was 9 years because I guess my youngest was 9. And in Israel, it's when people see on the news, they look at what's going on, they probably think, oh my gosh, you must have your kids under lock and key. It's so different here. Things that you would never let your children do alone in America, is like nothing here. I mean, your 11 or 12-year-old can take the bus by themselves. They can go to Jerusalem alone. I would never. I lived in Passaic, New Jersey before I came here. I can assure you I would never let my 11 or 12-year-old, I mean, I don't think, because I wasn't there when they were that age, take the train to Manhattan or something like that. I just can't imagine that that's really safe. So my kids were able, even at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, if the older ones were home, the younger ones, they would watch the younger ones, things like that. So I had that sort of covered. And I also only got divorced 6.5 years ago. So the kids were already older by that time as well.
Okay.
And as far as the podcast, I love doing it. So I just started recording. I knew I was never going to put out more than one episode a week. And even now I kind of put out anywhere from 1 to 3 a month. It just depends on what's going on. And the practice itself, I learned also sort of after COVID that I would rather work 4 really long days and then take an extra day off during the week. So that's what I do. I work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We work on Sunday here. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I could sometimes stay in my clinic till 7, 8 o'clock at night. But then Thursdays, I don't work. I'm off Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that just makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference to know that you have a day where you can meet friends, you can run errands. I used to always say, like, if someone's working full time, like, you get it, you're a single mother, right? So if someone's working full time, how do you, I don't know, go to the post office, go shopping. I don't know about you, I hate shopping. So now I let my kids go because they're older. So my girls come home, they go shopping.
Yeah.
A lot of help. You know how they say it takes a village?
Yeah, it definitely does.
I have to say my parents live around the corner. I don't think I ever took my youngest daughter, not even one time, to the orthodontist. I think my mother took her every time.
Wow.
So, and they could go by themselves, but
yeah,
like that. I certainly didn't do it alone. I also have really good friends because most people move over to this country and they don't necessarily have family. Your friends become your family. I'm fortunate that I have family because my parents moved over when I was young, but I also have really good friends and we all have each other's back. So I have friends that really, even sometimes if I was working and my kids were sick, my friends would pick them up and watch them and things like that. So certainly it was nothing. I am no great superhero. I'm someone who, no, really, I'm someone who I try to teach my patients, you have to be selfish with your health because women tend to be the most selfless people in the world. They will put everyone before themselves. They will do everything until they become this dish rag. They haven't exercised. They've barely gotten to eat. They maybe eat the leftovers. And I'm like, you have to be selfish with your health. I never had a problem being selfish with my health. Even when I was married, my husband was a very good father. He would get up, I would leave the house at 5 a.m. I'd go to the gym. I'd go to work. I'd work from 7 to 1. Then I'd be there to pick the kids up from school. So we worked it out. So I was always able to make sure that if I have at least, 6, 7 hours of sleep a night and I get to exercise, then you can have me do anything else. But if you take those things away from me, it's not going to work.
I think that's awesome that you had, that it definitely does take a village, and ultimately, it's the community that you have, in doing all of the things. So raising a family, and even being able to keep your career up, and you have to have that. It's essential.
Do you know what else helps? We celebrate Shabbat. So from Friday night at sundown until Saturday night after dark, there's no electronics, there's no phones. We are with our family, with our friends. You're communicating. You know what it's like to sit at a table where no one has a phone and you actually sit and talk to each other. And there's something so rejuvenating about that as well, is keeping Shabbat.
That sounds great. We need to have that over here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the kids are walking around on their devices. My ex-husband got my 8-year-old a cell phone, and I'm like, why? I'm noticing as an adult in my big age, the cognitive shifting of spending hours just scrolling all day, to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to turn my notifications off of all the social media platforms, because I feel like when I see them, then automatically I have to pick up my phone and it goes from looking to scrolling. I don't
Right.
have time for that.
No, it's so true. But if you try to even get your kids, I mean, I don't know if you guys sit down to dinner together at all, but if you do, or even once a week, try to sit down with everyone who, some of your kids are probably teenagers
Oh
but
yeah.
try to, get everyone to sit down and just put their phones away for the meal and
Mhm.
see what it's like just to have these conversations. It's wonderful. Like we spend the whole day, as a family, but then we also all go off to our own friends. And even with your friends, you can like I'll watch groups that people go out to eat like in a restaurant and you'll see everyone at the table has a phone, right? It's
Yeah.
so easy just to, so you can do it even if you don't keep Shabbat, just trying to do a meal that's phone free or even a night, like 24 hours. It's like a detox from electric, think of all the EMFs, right? Because I'm that
Yeah.
crazy also that I don't even sleep with my phone in the room, the EMFs that come out of it. You don't want that stuff, you know. Again,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that there's so much good on the internet. There's really so much good. And
Mhm.
even social media platforms, like there can really be a lot of good, but we have to also be able to turn it off and detox from it. And
Exactly. Because that's definitely essential. I feel like too much of the electronics, the consumption, definitely makes people more disconnected. Like there's just such a huge disconnect here, and it's very sad. It's very very sad.
it's true. It's true. I actually have two of my four kids are not on social media at all. And that's self-driven. That's not, in fact, my kids do the opposite. And my other two who are on social media don't ever post anything ever. And they get embarrassed that their mother posts all the time and they like literally will try to take my phone. They'll try to delete things. So I try to respect them and I really rarely will post them,
Yeah.
rarely ever, occasionally in a story or something, but I'll usually cover their face. Like I try to respect them because they don't like it. But I
Yeah.
just have to say, this is really you might like this is really, really, really funny. But on Hanukkah, we were supposed to go somewhere, and two of my kids were home, and I told them we can't leave until we clean the house. So
Mhm.
I went out to do something, and I came back, and they had taken my phone, my two daughters, and they made a TikTok to "It's a Hard Knock Life" of them dancing in rooms, and they left it in my drafts. But then I posted it, and then they got really mad at me. But it's hilarious. It is so funny. It is so funny.
That
But
is
they
hilarious.
don't go anywhere near it, but it was so funny.
Oh, so that got to go at the top number one of like most memorable.
Yeah. Yes.
um, what are some of the biggest health or mindset challenges you see in your patients, and how do you help them overcome these struggles?
So generally, by the time people come to me, because they have to pay privately here, because I'm private,
Mm.
by the time they come to me, they're usually really in pain and they're tired of being in pain. So it's not that hard to get them to get them motivated. But one of the first things I do with every single person is I'm explaining to them the way the stabilizing system in the body works. Let's say, for example, you come in and you tell me your knee is hurting you. So I'm gonna hear your whole history. I'm gonna evaluate you. I'm gonna look at the way you move.
Mm.
And then I'm going to start explaining things to you because the end of the day, people don't realize that the knee, it's never really about what's going on at the knee. If the knee is hurting, it's either something at the hip has gone wrong, something at the foot has gone wrong, or both. The knee is sort of this like poor little joint that's stuck between the hip and the ankle. So it's always very much dependent. It doesn't mean you don't need exercises for the knee, but it's never really about exercises for the knee. It's the other things.
Mm.
So my knee sits on my hip. So if my hip isn't as stable and doing the things that it should be doing, how successful is my knee rehab going to be? But my hip sits on the center of my body. The center of my body is where the core is. Everybody's heard the word core. It gets thrown around all the time. Core exercise, everyone knows they need it. But most people don't understand the difference between strengthening the core and stabilizing the core. And the
Mm.
difference in that is part of what I explained in my first session. But the essential difference, I'll give it to you. I explain the whole way the system works to people. And then I tell them this is what you need to remember
Mm.
is that my head and neck need to line up. My head and neck have to actually sit, like somebody's pulling me up tall with my chin slightly tucked. Now, if you look at the way most people sit, the default sitting position is this forward head position, right? So
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, so if I get my head and neck lined up, you'll feel what happens to my rib cage. If my
Mm.
head is up tall and my chin is tucked, my rib cage is now going to sit on my pelvis or on my pelvic floor. And what actually controls my stabilizing system, believe it or not, is breathing. So the biggest problem in the world is that people do not breathe the way they are supposed to. I cannot create stability if I don't know how to breathe well. So one of the first things I teach people to do is how to breathe. And then from learning how to breathe, I teach them how to actually turn that into stability. Now, the reason people go along with this is because when you breathe the way you were supposed to, which most people are never doing, because imagine that most people are sitting like this all day long. They don't even know they're supposed to sit with their head up and their chin tucked. So they don't realize that because they're sitting like this, they've lost natural diaphragmatic breathing. But what
Mm.
happens when I breathe diaphragmatically is I actually turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body down. So, for example, I'm sure you know many people who've been told they should meditate because they have back pain and because they're stressed. Well, that's great. But if you don't teach them how to breathe the right way, then how successful is that meditation going to be? So you'll find a lot of people have been like, I tried that medication and that's a bunch of garbage and it doesn't work. Well, that's because they weren't lined up. So when they did all the breathing, they didn't actually work the system the way it should get to work. So they never turned on the parasympathetic system that would calm the body down. And the other big thing about breathing is that when everything's lined up and you breathe diaphragmatically, which means, you're kind of moving in a 360-degree thing, when the top of you, where the diaphragm sits below the rib cage, when that pushes downward, what happens is it actually pushes on your digestive tract. So now if we go back and we think of all of these people that have digestive issues, right? So many people have them. Of course, what you're eating is super important. But if you're never getting that system to like move, if you're not massaging that system, you're not going to efficiently push things out the other end. Other reason that's super important, and let's think to how many people have autoimmune diseases now, is that 70% of the lymph system, that's the immune system of the body, right? We know we have lymph nodes under the arms and in the neck. We have them all over the body. But I believe the number is 70% of them are actually in your gut. And that's why what you eat very much affects autoimmune disease. And people still think that like, oh, the only thing they can do is take drugs to help their autoimmune disease. All the drugs do is change your symptoms. It's not actually fixing the problem. To fix the problem, to get to the root of the problem, you do have to change the way you're eating. But when you breathe, that's one of the only ways, diaphragmatic breathing, that you can actually move that 70% of the lymph system that's inside your gut. So even just learning to breathe well and stabilize well, anybody with back pain, you will feel better. Just breathing, you will feel better. It will not hold if you don't learn what to do with it. So because the exercises start out, it's like the first week people could come and it could be like breathing and one or two other things. And they're like, oh, well, 5 minutes or 7 minutes a day, that's not so bad. So they're willing to do it. And then we build on it every week. So they sort of feel the motivation as they see the changes, as they, start to get calmer, as they feel what's going on. It's not that hard to sell. And they're
Mm.
paying money. And when you pay money for something, it becomes an easier sell as well, because otherwise you're really wasting your money. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Wow, that was so valuable.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
the whole breathing part. So the whole concept of like the lazy digestive system, that's not really a thing. That's just would it be attributed to a lazy breathing, a lazy breather, kind of.
I think that, let's put it this way. I always tell people, I'm not saying that breathing is going to cure your colitis or your gastroenteritis, but I'm telling you it will help it. And it's certainly not going to hurt. And I think that for someone, if you're saying like a lazy digestive system, I absolutely think breathing is crucial. I think making sure you get enough fiber and making sure you're eating the right things. And we can argue over what the right things are. I can tell you that from what I've learned, a vegan diet long term for most people is not going to be a healthy diet. And I can also tell you from things I've learned that a carnivore diet for many people is not going to be healthy long term. And people have to understand their own systems. You have to try things on yourself, see what feels good and what works for you. And I can tell you, interesting enough, one of the people that I interviewed was Kashif Khan. He is the head of the DNA company. So I actually have done DNA testing. And when you do DNA testing, and there are a lot of things you will learn in the DNA testing that you may already know about yourself by the time you're an adult. And there's interesting things they can tell you, even what career you're suited toward. There's all these very interesting things that they can tell you about yourself. And some of the interesting things that you can learn, which made things make sense to me, are things like, are you somebody who digests saturated fat well? Well, I'm somebody who digests it okay, right? Are
Mm.
you somebody who digests a high carbohydrate diet well? I'm somebody who only digests it okay. So for me, a high carbohydrate diet is never going to be great. For me, a high only meat carnivore diet is never going to be great. And it's sort of finding that balance. So I'm someone where like a Mediterranean type of a diet is a good diet. But the more I've read and the more I've learned about grains and about glyphosate, which is sprayed on a lot of grains and even on a lot of things like chickpeas and things like that, for many, many people, a lot of those things aren't going to be great for them as well. So
Mm.
while all of this sounds confusing, because I feel like we've thrown out a lot of things that you already understand about, because I've just heard everything the way, a lot of these things are new for many people. And what I tell people is, the end of the day, inflammation is the enemy of the body. And so many things cause inflammation in the body today, including lack of sleep, including stress, including the stressors to the body that we talked about, things like that would disrupt like your endocrine system, things like these toxic smells. If you have parasites, if you're somebody who's highly sensitive, you could be very sensitive to things like molds and things like that. And a lot of these people who talk about these things I've interviewed on my podcast. And it's starting to weed things out. But again, start easy. If you're somebody who's eating, every meal at the vending machine, start by saying, you know what, I'm only going to eat things that I recognize. And if I can't cook it myself, then I'm just going to eat raw vegetables and I'm going to take fruit and I'm going to cook some meat. Because if you're eating like everybody talks about, I think it's the outside aisles of the, grocery store,
Yeah.
that's a great place to start. You're going to feel so much better. And if you feel great after that, great. And if you don't, well, that's when you start saying, well, maybe I have to get rid of all grains, or maybe I have to get rid of certain things, or maybe for me it's gluten, or maybe it's dairy. I don't think that every person is allergic to every single thing. But I think
Exactly.
that packaged things aren't good for anybody. Processed food is not good for anyone.
Exactly. Yeah, I've definitely shifted a lot within like for this last month. I cut out like I changed so much. The only thing that I still do that I'm still working on is like not smoking cigarettes. But
Okay.
like outside of that, like I don't drink alcohol anymore. I stopped going to fast food spots. Like when I started the protocol, I was like, I'm just going like full on in and I'm gonna try to eat as clean as I possibly can. And unfortunately for a lot of people, I think eating healthy and clean is also expensive. Like
Yes.
it's very expensive. But for me, and this doesn't apply for everyone, right? When you talked about intermittent fasting, I do that. So I tend to eat one time a day. I'm not a morning eater. If I do, I'll try to like grab some sort of vegetable or I'll make like a hot soup or something like that, and I'll have that. But outside of that, it's like beans, grains, and then I do like this whole food. So this is my binder that I
Mhm.
do for my cleanse,
Mhm.
and lots of water, and I put lime in it. You know,
Oh, wow. Mhm.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I
And
noticed the difference.
I was going to say, and you're finding something that works for you, and that's amazing. And I think that's what it's about. I'm trying to get away now, because when you meet friends, it's always like, what does everyone want to do? It's like, oh, let's just go to a restaurant. But all the restaurants, the oils in the restaurant, canola oil is a disaster. It's so bad for you, and that's what all of the restaurants are using. And listen, it's not easy. Don't think I'm not skinny. I've never been skinny in my entire life. I'm strong and I'm muscular, but I could lose 20 pounds. And I found that what was happening was I was really like, you know what, going full force, trying to lose. I'm like, again, it's not about your weight. It's about how healthy you are. I don't, everybody has their own reason that they do things.
Yeah.
But I found the more I tried to fast, the more resistant my body was to losing weight. So I found that for me, it's, and again, it might be my age. I'm perimenopausal. I'm 55 years old. It wasn't working for me. And I have to work hard to make sure that I don't fast, because it's so much easier not to eat, especially because I start working and I sometimes will work like the whole day with like out of break and things like
Yeah.
that. And I think that's for each person. It's just figuring out what works for you, and exactly what you're saying and what I'm saying. Start with the little things. Start by saying, okay, I'm not going to use canola oil anymore, and I'm I'm only, going to eat food that I can recognize, even if I go out. I'm going to make sure it's, a piece of grilled food and I don't know, rice or something easy. And as it gets easier, you can start to cut other things. Because I think the
Exactly.
biggest problem with most people is we want everything quickly and we try to do everything at once. And when
Yeah.
you start small, it just makes it so much bigger.
Yeah, because then you can build on to that, and it also establishes trust within yourself too. Like, oh, I was able to accomplish this, so maybe I can do that next, and add that on.
Exactly, exactly. Little habits, walking more. And I've even learned things, because I've exercised my whole life, and too much of a good thing can be bad, especially as you age, especially as you're perimenopausal. Running marathons, listen, if someone wants to do it, do it. But
Yeah,
I'm here to tell you that as someone who used to do, an hour and a half, 2 hours of cardio many days a week, it actually can be inflammatory to the body as well. And that's not always a great thing. And as you
exactly.
get older, strength training is like, you got to do it. But you want to be
Hmm.
stable first. You want to strength
Yeah,
train around the system. Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm gonna ask my closing question. This
Sure.
was a really good episode, by the way. Before I do, I just want to engage the audience. I hope that you guys are interacting in the comment section. Please let me know what your biggest takeaway was from this episode. I'm also gonna get your website, your podcast up here on the screen.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, can you just send it to me?
Sure. Oh, do I
Yeah.
end the
Yep.
chat?
Yep. Yep.
No.
All
Okay, so
right.
the podcast.
Yep, I'm gonna put it up here for you. And then if you guys could just leave in the comments, what is your biggest takeaway from this episode? What are you currently doing at this time to increase your health and wellness, and how are you incorporating that around everything else you have going on? Also, guys, please make sure you hit the thumbs up button and the subscribe. It helps the channel's engagement. Also helps make it more seen, visual. It happens. Okay, hold on. Let me get this up here for you. And then the closing question, if you could leave any of our listeners with one key message about health, faith, and resilience, what would that be?
So I would definitely say just understanding that the biggest issue in the health field today is inflammation and just trying to understand what those inflammatory triggers may be for you. I think is something that is really important. And to try to be balanced. So that means I used to think that I had to do, an hour of hard cardio a day and all of this strength training and being okay and being gracious with yourself. If you miss a day, it's okay. And understanding that even walking is good for you. And, I think that I believe, and my final question of my podcast is always, what does spirituality mean to you? Because I believe that spirituality and religion have nothing to do with each other.
Mm.
And you can be a spiritual person without being religious. So I think whatever spirituality is to you, whether it's communing with nature, whether you believe in God, you don't believe in God, doesn't necessarily matter, but finding something that gives you this sense of peace and this sense of spirituality. And having that, I think that it's important for everyone to have some type of spirituality in their life as well. I think that that helps you become healthier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I thank you so much for all of the information that you have been able to contribute here today. That spirituality portion, that's my main go-to. I feel like at some point, not everybody comes to that realization, but a lot of people are naturally driven by spirit, right? Whether they're going against or with.
I agree with
That's
you.
how we're
I really
operating.
agree with you. And that's
Mhm.
why understanding how different people view their spirituality is very interesting to me,
Okay.
because I think it's an important thing to have. I think that if you have nothing that you believe in, nothing that grounds you, nothing that gives you that sense of peace, and I think that it's, you look around the world and it's really not an easy place to live in sometimes.
Yeah,
So
for sure. For sure. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for being on here today and making time. And for my viewers at home, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. Again, make sure you interact in the comments. subscribe and like. And then also don't forget to check out the Holy Health podcast. It's on all podcast apps and platforms and on YouTube. Until next time, guys. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much.